Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Murder, where I'll be talking about and reviewing an episode of Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, or Jonathan Creek. Today, I'm looking at Jonathan Creek, the Raccoonskin cap, or as I like to call it, that time hair bubbles existed. We begin the episode with a tilty hospital and Carla narrating that Jill Whiteley went to her car and saw a shadow. Oh no, it's Mitsurugi! And as she drove, a car flashed her, so a car chase ensued. And although she thought the other driver was going to hurt her, he actually pointed out the dead body attached to her car. We discover the victim's name is Rose, with another strangled victim a day before named Iris. And witnesses said there was a shadow of someone wearing a Davy Crockett hat. You've all heard of ponytails though, right? Carla interviews Superintendent Ted, who goes on about capital punishment on live TV. Lovely. While Jonathan tracks down Adam, who's on a date with a raffle prize winner, although he's less than thrilled about it. Sergeant Heather Davey dons a wig and goes for a walk, recreating the latest victim's final movements. But shots are fired from a nearby building, so everybody hits the deck. Somebody protect the dog! And Ted spots a gun in a window and holds Heather's hand. You know, for comfort. The police boot down the locked door and find no one there, while Adam returns to the theatre looking awful because Velda died from choking on her food. The next day, Carla hides from Jonathan, but he's been hired for the case, and there's obviously some history between them, and Carla tells a distracted Brendan that Jonathan called her father something offensive. The next day, Carla and Jonathan go to investigate the shooting scene, and she argues with him, so they split off, Carla looking at the gun room and Jonathan inspecting where the bullets landed. He finds something sticky around the bullet hole and deduces the shooter set charges to go off in the building to look like gunshots, having propped the rifle up hours before. Jonathan worries that this is part of a bigger scheme, so they go to Ted's office where Carla noses around his desk, which is booby-trapped to stop snoopers. And that night, during Adam's magic act, some guy runs naked onto the stage, dances around and fully hangs dong. Okay then. Ted gets a call about a Davy Crockett sighting, so rallies the troops, including Heather, who is all flirty. So Ted gives her something and they all move out. When they get to the college, Heather goes in alone, which is surely against protocol. And when she hits the gym, the lights go out, so she calls Ted, who finds the doors locked, so he tells Heather to get her back against the wall. Over the radio, Ted hears Heather struggling, calling her attacker a bastard, and when they get the door open and the lights on, they find the room empty, except for Heather's dead body, which shows signs of strangulation. Ted calls in Carla and Jonathan and explains he and Heather were lovers, and after Jonathan picks up a faint buzzing on the recording of her death, Ted reports they found blood on Heather's uniform that didn't belong to her. It suddenly dawns on Carla that all three victims had flower names, so she announces it on TV, watched by this lady and her Jonathan hair. And Jonathan, who is sick of this shit, and even more so when he finds out the streaker now has his own dressing room. He then goes to dinner with Brendan and Carla, uncomfortable with how they're using these murders to boost ratings, but Brendan's mention of his blood pressure sparks something, but Jonathan's not sure what it means yet. Outside, the floofy-haired woman bumps into Carla, dropping all her stuff, and tells her to come over that night alone for information. And in the car, Jonathan and Carla argue, Carla bringing up what he said about her dad. Carla goes to meet the woman and finds her door open, so goes nosing around, while Jonathan realizes that ponytails do actually exist and rushes after Carla, who gets strangled but manages to fight off her attacker. Moira isn't helpful. She seemingly strangled people because she liked it, but denies having anything to do with Heather's death. Jonathan questions Heather's final words. Bastard and you'll never get away seemed like odd choices, but Carla doesn't care and flounces off. Jonathan goes to the theatre and finds the streaker being a diva, so fires him, and then Carla comes back complaining about what Jonathan said to her dad, but Jonathan says she only heard the first half, and that makes him realise something horrible. The next day, Carla films her segment for the show, joined by Ted and Jonathan, who plays the recording and says Heather wasn't talking to Moira, she was talking to Ted, trying to say, "You'll never get away with this." The shooting was a setup to ensure Heather wore a bulletproof vest to go into the gym, one that was rigged with the same mechanism as a blood pressure monitor, which crushed her body. And in the ambulance, Ted switched his vest with the rigged one, leaving blood behind. Ted admits to it because Heather was sleeping around and she made fun of the necklace he gave her and his age, so he pulled the necklace around her neck to make the strangle mark, which she then removed. Brendan declares Jonathan and Carla a great team, and at Velda's funeral, the streaker shows everyone what he's got. I watched all of Jonathan Creek as a kid and then again as an adult, and this is the only episode I couldn't remember during that rewatch, making the solution all that more clever. Before we get into that though, this episode introduces Carla as a character, and right off the bat she's stuck up, combative and kind of annoying. I don't know why they picked a character like that to replace Maddie, who was more humorous, more likeable and had a better connection to Jonathan, so Carla falls short in all her appearances. Throughout the series, Carla doesn't really evolve. She remains stuck up, combative and kind of annoying, but there was a moment in this episode that could have been the start of her character growth, the moment where she fights off Moira and has a meltdown afterwards, but they didn't capitalize on this idea of being capable but vulnerable and kept her character at one level throughout, which is a shame. As is pretty standard with the show, Adam and his storyline had nothing to do with the main plot, so as a character he's just padding and fluff, which can get tiring after a while. In the pilot episode, when the character was played by Anthony Stewart Head, Adam was actually involved in the story, but since then he's just an addition rather than adding anything of substance to the show. Now back to the episode. This is such a good one because it's so unexpected. Let's look at Moira first, and obviously ponytail aside, a serial strangler is conventionally a guy, but this chick full on went around strangling people and strapping them to random people's cars just because she got a kick out of it. And while her story kind of fizzled out, it had strength in bucking the trend, and she gets bonus points from me for trying to kill Carla. On Ted's side of things, I like the mild saw trap idea. It's one of the most complex and engineered locker room mysteries in this show. The motive wasn't anything new, but the method and setup were clever and well thought out, as well as being connected to the other crime, with clues throughout to follow. The setup shooting, which was its own little locked room mystery, the booby-trapped desk, Heather's dying words, the blood on her vest. It's a good one. I really enjoyed this episode. I just wish we'd had Maddie instead of Carla. We have 3 victims. Rose and Iris, both strangled by our first killer, Moira Jane Rowe, because she just felt like it, and Sergeant Heather Davey, whose chest was crushed by a rigged bulletproof vest made by our second killer, Superintendent Ted Parnovic, who was a lover scorned when Heather made fun of him and slept around. So there you have it. That was the Raccoonskin Cap. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot, or consider subscribing if you want to keep investigating with me. Alternatively, feel free to check out my other YouTube channels. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and keep an eye out for clues.